When the print production process starts, there'll be four phases here. The first one is idea and concept. And this is what you've done a lot of work as a design student, and that when it comes to a project, you got to define what the product is. What are the goals for this product? Who are we making it for? What's it going to be used for? And those are decisions that will come to you from a client. If you're a freelance person, you may have some input on these decisions, but these might already be determined by a client. Or if you work for some bigger company, there'll probably be a team of people, and you'll have to work together to answer some of these questions. And in this stage is where you can start brainstorming graphic ideas, doing sketches, um, some ideas, and really trying to sample out what it is that you're making. After that, once you've decided on a product, you can start moving into the creative production phase. And this is where you as a designer will take on most of your work. Um, and so in creative production, I kind of split it into two areas. One is images and text. This is just gathering everything together. You're going to get images given to you that need to be used. You're going to have to go out and find your own images. Um, you're going to make decisions on typography and color choices. You may have to go get these approved before you even start with the layout process. When you get photos, you may have to do color correcting and retouching them and editing and resizing them for physical size and resolution, making sure that they're high resolution photos. You may get, if it's a really big project, you may have a vast supply of images and have to organize them and come up with naming schemes and folders to keep yourself organized and also rate them. So depending on the size of the project, you may have to set up some systems of how do you collect these images, how do you rate them, and then what's your process for resizing them, retouching them, color correcting, and so on. And you may have to create your own images. You may have to go be a photographer. You may have to do illustrations. Um, and then you also work into the layout. So that's you're putting everything together, creating the layouts. So the important thing with layouts is making sure that they're technically correct, that you got the right document size set up, that your colors are in CMYK for print, um, and that if you make errors on layouts, that's where it can cost you some money. So this is a huge part of the designer's job, and you make it through the layout process and coming up with the designs. And when you're all finished with that, then you hand off your files to the printer. So the industrial production section phase is the printing essentially, and everything that's going to actually produce your printed product. And that's divided up into three areas. We have pre-press, we have printing, which is press, and then we have bindery and finishing. Um, and so when you give your files to pre-press, they will pre-flight them. They're going to take a look at them, they're going to tear them apart, they're going to look at them very closely, analyze them, look at your file formats, your color schemes, to make sure you have everything set up correctly, the document sizes, and all of that sort of stuff. And then most importantly, they'll make proofs, and those proofs will come back to you. We'll talk about that in a little bit here, but prepress also will do the color separations, and they prepare your artwork to be printed. That's the whole purpose of prepress, is to take the artwork from designers and prepare it, and their final output is giving printing plates to the press. So there's many different steps involved there, which we're going to cover this quarter. That includes layout, imposition, um, and making proofs. And then once they make those printing plates, they'll give those to the press operators, to the press room, and it goes to printing. And then printing takes over. That happens. Uh, the time on a printing press is very valuable and expensive. So this is pretty much the most expensive manual labor portion of the print production flow is the printing press time. Um, so it's very important to make sure everything is correct when it gets to the press. After the press prints the product, then you move on to whatever needs to be done to that printed work, and that is finishing, also called a bindery. Bindery comes from bookbinding, but it includes pretty much anything that happens to the printed paper to create the final product. So like folding, collating, folding, stapling, punching holes, binding, gluing, anything that needs to be done to get your printed paper into its final product form. We call that bindery. It's a general term, or finishing. After everything's gone through the bindery and finishing, then the final phase is just distribution, the logistics of how is this going to be shipped? Is the printer going to ship it out directly to the customer for you, or are they giving it to you and then you give it to the client? Is it going to be in cases and pallets? If they're doing direct mailing from the factory, then what do you need to supply? A list of names and addresses. And so this is something to consider. It doesn't really affect your design as much, but it does affect the total cost of the job. And we'll talk about that next week in quoting and working with the print sales about how um, the cost of the job is calculated. So in this course, we're going to focus mainly on these two sections right here, which is creative production and industrial production. Um, so we're looking at you as a designer, images, text, layout, and then the print production process, pre-press, which is critical, and then what happens to your work to get printed. We'll look at the printing process and some bindery and finishing processes as well.